The first light of dawn touches the cobblestone streets. A warm glow flickers from a stone oven, and the scent of fresh bread drifts into the waking town. Step inside a medieval bakery, where every loaf tells a story, and every day begins before the sun itself. This is the quiet, humble life of the medieval baker. The medieval town still lies in slumber when the baker begins his work. Long before the roosters crow or the church bells mark the first prayers of the day, a quiet figure stirs in the darkness. Wrapped in a woolen cloak against the chill, he rises from a simple bed, careful not to wake his family. For the baker's hours belong not to comfort, but to the rhythm of fire, flour, and patience. Stepping outside into the pre-dawn air, he can see his breath rising in pale clouds. The streets are silent, save for the distant sound of a watchman's boots echoing against the stones. The bakery itself is humble but sturdy, built of stone with a timber-framed roof. Inside, the heart of the building awaits. The great oven, cold and blackened after yesterday's work. Lighting the fire is the first task. The baker kneels at the oven's mouth, arranging kindling with practiced care. Thin slivers of wood, dried twigs, and small chips are laid in a careful crosshatch. He strikes, flint against steel, sending sparks that leap into the darkness. At last one catches. Smoke curls upward, and a flicker of orange light dances across his face. Slowly, the fire takes hold, feeding on the dry wood until flames grow steady. It is not enough simply to have a flame. The oven must be coaxed to life, its vast stone chamber heated so thoroughly that the warmth will hold for hours. The baker tends the blaze as if it were a living creature. He adds heavier logs, listening to the crack and hiss as they catch. Soon the bakery is alive with light, the cold chased away by the growing heat. Shadows stretch across the walls, and the once quiet room now hums with the low roar of fire. The baker works in silence, broken only by the occasional creak of wood or the pop of sap inside the flames. There is no audience here, no applause for his labor, yet in this quiet hour there is a kind of peace. While others sleep, he prepares the bread that will nourish. Then through the day, his work is not glorious, but it is essential, a service woven into the life of the town, as surely as the tolling of bells or the ringing of the blacksmith's hammer. He wipes his brow, already damp from the heat. On a nearby shelf, wooden peels, long-handled tools for placing and removing loaves, rest in neat order. Clay jars of salt and small sacks of coarse ground flour are stacked close at hand. The baker checks the oven again, adjusting the logs so that the fire burns evenly. He knows the signs well, the color of the flames, the sound of wood settling, the way the heat radiates outward. When the stones glow faintly with warmth, he will know the hearth is ready. Outside, the town stirs faintly. A dog barks, then quiets again. The air smells of wood smoke now, drifting from the bakery chimney into the still dark sky. For travelers passing on the road, the sight of that smoke is a promise. Bread will soon be ready. Warmth and sustenance wait within. The baker pauses for a moment, leaning on his wooden paddle, and gazes into the fire. He knows the day ahead will be long, filled with kneading, shaping, and delivering loaves. But in this moment, before dawn, there is a sense of ritual. Lighting the oven is more than a chore. It is the heartbeat of the bakery, the first step in a day's labor that ties him to generations of bakers before him. The warmth spreads outward, filling the bakery with life. The hearth is no longer dark. Soon, the flour will be sifted, the water poured, the dough kneaded with steady hands. But for now, the fire has been awakened, and with it, the town's day begins. With the oven steadily warming, the baker turns his attention to the heart of his craft, the dough itself. Bread may appear simple: flour, water, salt, and yeast. Yet in the baker's hands, it becomes something much greater. The mixing of dough is both labor and ritual, a careful dance of timing, touch, and patience. On the wide wooden workbench, sacks of flour are already waiting. Coarse linen bags filled with milled grain, each with its own texture and scent. The baker knows them well. Some flour is made from barley, some from rye, some from wheat, if the harvest was kind. Wheat is always the most prized, lighter, and finer, while barley and rye are sturdy and nourishing. A good loaf often blends them together, marrying strength and softness. He lifts the first sack with practiced strength and pours a mound of flour onto the bench. The pale dust rises into the air, catching the flickering firelight in tiny motes. His hands, roughened by years of kneading, shape the flour into a wide hollow, a little like a basin carved from snow. Into this hollow, he pours cool water from a clay jug. The liquid pools in the center, darkening the pale edges of flour, waiting to be worked together. A pinch of salt follows, carefully measured. Too much, and the bread is harsh. Too little, and it is flat, lifeless. From a small jar, he sprinkles in the leavening, wild yeast saved from yesterday's batch, a sour, living starter that breathes life into the dough. This is the soul of the bread. Without it, flour and water would remain heavy and dense. With it, the dough will rise, expanding with air, growing light and soft. The baker plunges his hands into the mixture. At first, it is sticky, clinging to his fingers, pulling at the skin. But slowly, with firm, steady motion, he draws flour into the water, folding and pressing. The mixture thickens, resists, begins to take shape. He pushes, pulls, stretches, and folds, each movement practiced, each stroke guided by memory and feel. This is not work that can be rushed. The dough must be given time to come alive beneath his hands. The sound of kneading fills the bakery. A soft rhythmic slap against the board, a steady push and fold. Push and fold. The dough grows smoother, more elastic. Where once it was lumpy and wet, now it begins to shine faintly, supple and strong. The baker leans his weight into the work, shoulders rising and falling, his breath steady. In these quiet hours, kneading is more than labor. It is meditation. Each motion connects him to the earth that grew the grain, to the miller who ground it, to the fire that waits in the oven. He pauses to dust the board with flour, sprinkling a fine layer across the surface before returning to his work. His hands are white now, coated in a soft powder that clings to his skin, yet he does not mind. A baker's hands are never clean of flour, just as a shepherd's are never free of wool. These marks are badges of his craft, a sign of the life he has chosen. When at last the dough feels ready, he shapes it into a great mound, round and smooth, and sets it into a wide wooden trough to rest. The yeast will wake within it, feeding and growing, releasing the bubbles that will transform it. This time of waiting is as important as the kneading itself. Too short, and the bread will be heavy. Too long, and it will sour. The baker knows this balance, learned not from books, but from countless mornings like this one. As the dough rests, he wipes his hands clean and surveys the room. More sacks of flour wait in the corner, enough for dozens of loaves. The fire in the oven still burns brightly, its heat climbing higher with each log consumed. Outside, the sky has begun to pale, streaks of soft grey light filtering into the street. Soon, the town will awaken. Children will run with coins, clutched in small fists, to fetch the day's bread. Merchants will buy loaves to share with apprentices and travelers. Farmers will eat it in the fields, a simple meal, but one that sustains. The baker glances at the mound of dough, already rising faintly, and feels a quiet satisfaction. This is where the bread begins, in the silent rhythm of kneading, in the patient waiting of yeast and time. It is humble work, yet it is also creation. Flour and water, salt and leavening, simple gifts of the earth, brought together by his hands into something that will nourish and comfort. He leans on the workbench, listening to the crackle of the oven, and allows himself a moment's rest. The hardest part is yet to come, but for now, the dough is alive, and the bakery hums with quiet promise. The dough has rested. It swells gently in the wooden trough, its surface domed and alive, small bubbles pressing through the skin of flour-dusted dough. When the baker places his hand on it, he feels its warmth, a faint pulse of life within. The yeast has done its work, and now it is time for the next step, shaping the loaves. He sprinkles flour across the workbench, creating a soft bed to keep the dough from sticking. With his wooden scraper, he divides the mound, cutting it into portions. Each piece must be nearly equal in weight, for the townsfolk who buy the bread expect fairness as much as nourishment. The dough resists, stretching like sinew before giving way to the tool. Soon, small lumps lie across the board, each one waiting to be transformed. The baker takes the first portion and cups it between his palms. He begins to fold it inward, tucking the edges beneath, pressing gently but firmly. The dough tightens as he works, smoothing into a round shape with a taut skin. He repeats the movement again and again, folding, pressing, turning. Soon, a perfect round loaf rests on the bench. Simple yet beautiful. He sets it aside and moves on to the next, repeating the rhythm until the board fills with rows of shaped loaves. Some will be round, perfect for tearing by hand. Others he lengthens into oblong shapes, good for slicing. A few he braids, weaving strands of dough together with patient care. These special loaves, often bought by wealthier families, look as pleasing as they taste. Their golden crusts will later reveal elegant twists and patterns that seem almost too fine for such humble ingredients. Children of the town often press their noses against the bakery's windows at this stage, watching the baker's hands move like magic. Though none are here yet, the street's still quiet. He knows how their eyes widen when they see a plain lump become a shining, perfect loaf. Bread is never just food. It is a symbol of care, of community, of life itself. Once the loaves are shaped, the baker dusts them lightly with flour and sets them onto wooden boards. Each loaf must rest again, this time in its final shape, to rise once more before the baking. He covers them with coarse linen cloths to keep them from drying. Beneath the fabric, the loaves slowly expand, their seams softening their seams softening, their skin loosening as the yeast continues its invisible work. The room smells faintly sour, alive with the scent of fermentation, mingling with wood smoke from the oven. It is not unpleasant. In fact, it is comforting. The scent tells the baker that his bread is alive and growing. It is the smell of promise, of nourishment yet to come. As he works, he recalls how he first learned this art. His master had scolded him for being too rough, for pressing the dough without care. "Bread has patience," the old man had said, "but it also has memory. It remembers how you treat it." The baker, has never forgotten those words. To this day, he handles dough with respect, never rushing, never forcing. Bread responds best to steady hands and calm intent. By now, the wooden boards are filled, and the covered loaves resemble sleeping children beneath their linen blankets. The baker pauses to check the oven. Its fire burns hot, the coals glowing white. Soon, the flames will die down, leaving behind a bed of steady heat, perfect for baking. Timing is everything. The loaves must be ready when the oven is ready. Too soon, and they will collapse under the heat. Too late, and the fire will fade. While he waits, he prepares wooden paddles, dusting them with flour so the loaves will slide easily. He sharpens his small knife as well, for before baking, each loaf must be scored. With a quick, shallow cut across the surface, the baker allows steam to escape and the dough to expand in the oven without tearing. These cuts, though practical, also give the loaves their character. Some bakers make simple crosses, others diagonal lines. Each loaf leaves the oven marked with its maker's hand. The baker uncovers one of the loaves and studies it. Its skin has grown smooth, its body plump and airy. When he presses it lightly, the dough springs back, leaving only the faintest impression. It is ready. He smiles, satisfied. Soon, the loaves will meet the oven's fire and become the bread that will feed his neighbors, his friends, and his own family. He places the knife aside and wipes his hands. For a moment, he rests, listening to the sounds of the bakery, the quiet breathing of the dough, the soft hiss of the oven's flames, the muffled stirrings of a town beginning to wake. This is the hour before life becomes busy, before voices fill the streets. Here, in the stillness of shaping, he finds a rare peace. For the baker, these rows of loaves are not just food. They are his daily offering to the world. Each shape holds the memory of his hands, his patience, his care. Each loaf is both sustenance and symbol, a bond between him and those who will eat it. And so, he works on, steady and sure, giving form to the simplest of ingredients, shaping not just bread, but the life of his community. The heart of the bakery is not the workbench, nor the trough of dough, but the oven itself. Built of thick stone, its arched chamber glows with the heat of the morning's fire. The baker approaches it carefully, his face warming as he peers inside. The flames have done their work, and now only embers remain, glowing like jewels across the hearth. He knows by instinct that the time is nearly right. He takes a long-handled rake and begins to draw the embers toward the opening, clearing the chamber. The heat that lingers within the walls is what will bake the loaves, not the fire itself. As he scrapes the coals aside, a fine layer of ash shifts with a hiss, floating upward in a swirl of silver dust. It catches the light before vanishing into the air, the last breath of the fire. When the floor of the oven is clear, the baker tests its readiness. He He sprinkles a handful of flour across the hot stones. The grains darken, then vanish in an instant. Too hot. He waits patient, listening to the tick of cooling stone, feeling the warmth radiate outward. Time is a quiet master here. To rush it is to ruin the bread. He takes another pinch of flour, casting it onto the hearth. This time it browns gently, releasing a nutty scent. Perfect. The loaves, now risen and ready, wait beneath their linen covers. He uncovers them one by one, revealing their smooth, plump shapes. Each loaf looks alive, its skin stretched tight by the rise, its form holding the memory of the baker's hands. He takes up his small knife and begins to score them. With a swift motion, he draws lines across the dough, shallow cuts that will open as the bread expands in the oven. Some he marks with simple crosses, others with diagonal slashes. On a few special loaves, he carves curved patterns, a quiet flourish that will set them apart. Now comes the most delicate task. Loading the oven, he dusts a wooden peel with flour, then slides it carefully under the first loaf. With a steady hand, he guides it into the oven's mouth, then with a sharp motion jerks the peel back, leaving the loaf resting on the hot stones. The dough quivers slightly, then settles, its scored seams already beginning to open. He repeats the process, filling the chamber row by row. Each loaf must be placed with care, leaving space between them so the heat can reach every side. The oven glows like a sunlit cavern, its heat shimmering in waves. Sweat beads on the baker's brow as he works, his arms steady despite the weight of the peel. Soon, the oven is full, its floor lined with pale shapes that will soon darken to gold. He closes the heavy wooden door, sealing them within. The bakery falls into a deep, waiting silence. For a time, there is little to do but tend the fire's remnants and watch for signs. The baker knows the smell will tell him more than any clock. First, the scent of yeast and raw flour lingers, but then, slowly, it begins to change. The air thickens with the fragrance of baking bread, rich and earthy. It curls through the room, seeping out into the street. Soon, the townsfolk will follow it, drawn to the bakery as surely as moths to a lantern. He crouches near the oven door, ear close to the stone. Inside, the loaves hiss softly, the sound of moisture escaping as steam. He smiles. They're alive, growing still, their crusts beginning to harden, their insides swelling with heat. It is a transformation both simple and miraculous, turning flour and water into the staff of life. After some minutes, the baker tests again. He opens the door slightly, the heat rushing out like a wave. With his peel, he shifts one loaf to check its bottom. It has turned a deep brown, crisp, but not burned. He knocks on it lightly with his knuckle, and it answers with a hollow sound. Perfect. The loaf is done. Now the work must be quick. He pulls the loaves out one by one, sliding them onto wooden boards. They tumble forth in rows, steaming, golden, their crusts crackling as they cool. The air is thick with the scent, so rich it almost feels like a meal in itself. The baker's chest swells with quiet pride. This is the moment he works for, the culmination of all the labor, the shaping, the patience, the tending of fire. Now the bread is ready to meet the world. He arranges the loaves neatly, rounds in one place, oblongs in another, braided loaves at the front where their beauty will catch the eye. Each loaf gleams with a sheen of flour dust and faint cracks from its rise. Some have opened wide at their seams, their interiors just visible, soft and pale against the browned crust. Others bear the marks of his knife, now stretched into patterns, as though the bread itself carries his signature. The sound of the street grows louder. Doors open, footsteps quicken, voices call. The smell of baking bread has reached them. Soon, the townsfolk will arrive with baskets and coins, ready to trade for the loaves that have just emerged from the oven's embrace. The baker wipes his brow with his sleeve and sets aside the peel. For now, his work with the oven is done. The fire rests, the bread is baked, and the warmth of the hearth lingers in the air. The baker pauses, leaning on his bench, and looks over his work. Each loaf is more than food. It is a story told in flour and flame, a bond between his hands and the mouths that will be fed. Tomorrow, the cycle will begin again. The fire kindled, the dough mixed, the oven filled. But today, for this moment, the heat of the oven has done its work, and the bakery glows with its triumph. The smell of fresh bread always arrives before the customers do. It seeps out through the bakery's shutters, curling into the narrow lanes of the town, clinging to stone walls and wooden beams. It is a scent so inviting that even those who had no plans to buy bread find themselves drawn closer, guided by hunger and memory. The baker, still flushed from the work at the oven, hears the first footsteps outside, light at first, then heavier. Voices follow, carrying the sound of eager conversation. He knows them without looking, neighbors, townsfolk, travelers who pass this way often enough that their patterns are familiar. The bakery is more than a place of work. It is a gathering point, a daily rhythm in the life of the community. The door creaks open, and the first customer steps inside. An elderly woman in a woolen cloak, her basket balanced on her arm. She is among the earliest risers in the town, and the baker has seen her many times before. Her eyes brighten as they fall on the steaming loaves, arranged on the boards, their golden crusts still crackling softly from the oven's heat. "Ah," she says, smiling, "you've outdone yourself this morning." The baker bows his head slightly, offering a polite word of thanks. With practiced hands, he selects a round loaf, its top marked with a simple cross, and places it carefully into her basket. She lingers a moment, breathing deeply, as though the smell itself is nourishment. Then, with a few coins exchanged, she leaves, her footsteps fading down the lane. More footsteps follow quickly behind. A pair of children burst through the door, their laughter filling the room. They carry a small pouch of coins, likely sent by their mother, and peer eagerly at the shelves. The baker chuckles as they point to the braided loaf at the front, the prettiest of the batch, with its golden strands woven together like ribbons. He sets it gently into their waiting hands, and their faces light up with delight. They scamper off, voices echoing down the street as they carry their treasure home. Soon, the shop is busy. Farmers arrive with boots caked in earth, their baskets empty and waiting. Craftsmen come, their hands rough from work at the forge or the workshop. Each selects their bread with care, knowing the difference between a loaf that will last for days and one meant to be eaten that very night. For some, bread is a companion to cheese or soup. For others, it is the meal itself, torn by hand and shared among family. The baker greets them all with quiet warmth. He does not linger in conversation. The rhythm of service leaves little time, but each exchange carries its own small ritual. A nod, a coin, a loaf, set into a cloth-lined basket. Sometimes, a kind word or a brief smile. The bakery is not grand, But within its walls there is a steady sense of belonging. As the line grows, the smell of bread seems to thicken. Filling every corner of the room. The loaves on display cool slowly, steam still rising in faint wisps, the crusts shifting as they settle. Customers pause to admire them, remarking on the patterns scored into the tops, the sheen of flour, the deep brown of the hearth-baked bottoms. The baker's work is not only to feed, but also to remind the town of something essential, the quiet artistry in a daily necessity. Now and then, someone lingers longer. A traveller passing through the town, curious about the oven or the recipe. The baker answers with patience but without boast, explaining only what is needed, the fire, the flour, the waiting. He does not reveal every detail, for the craft is not in secrets but in years of practice, in the feel of the dough beneath one's hands, in the instinct of knowing when the oven is ready. Outside, the square begins to stir. The clatter of carts, the calling of vendors, the sound of church bells in the distance. The bakery, however, is its own world. Customers step inside, share a moment with the baker, and step back out again, carrying with them not only bread, but also the warmth of the hearth. By mid-morning, the shelves grow lighter. The stacks of loaves shrink row by row, baskets once full, now nearly empty. The baker's arms are weary, but there is satisfaction in the emptiness, for it means the bread has found its way into the hands of those who need it. At last, the final customer arrives. A man with a weary look, his cloak dusted with the road. He has come late, and only a few loaves remain. The baker offers him one without hesitation, a simple round, still warm to the touch. The traveller's eyes soften as he accepts it, bowing his head in gratitude. He tucks the loaf into his satchel, and for a moment he looks less burdened by the weight of his journey. The door closes, and silence returns. Only a few crumbs remain on the boards, a dusting of flour across the bench. The baker exhales slowly, the bustle fading like the last notes of a song. He leans against the wall for a moment, letting the quiet settle around him. The morning has passed, the bread has been shared, and the bakery stands once more in stillness. He wipes down the bench, sweeps the floor, and tidies the tools. The oven still glows faintly, its warmth lingering though its work is done. Soon it will be left to cool, to rest until tomorrow's dawn. For now, the baker allows himself a moment of stillness. He pours a cup of water, sips slowly, and breathes in the faint scent that remains. The ghost of bread that filled the air only moments ago. Outside, the street is alive with sound. Bread is being sliced, buttered, shared across tables. Children nibble at the braided loaf. Farmers tear chunks from rounds. Families prepare their noonday meal. Though the bakery is quiet, its presence lingers in every corner of the town. In the simple act of feeding, the baker has tied himself to the rhythm of the day, a quiet thread woven through the life of the community. Tomorrow, it will begin again. But for today, the first customers have come and gone, and the story of bread has been told anew. The rush of the morning has passed. The shelves are bare, the baskets empty, and the bakery, once filled with voices and movement, now sits in a calm hush. The air is still heavy with the scent of bread, but it has softened, less sharp than before, like the echo of a song fading into memory. The baker wipes his brow with a cloth, his arms still tired from kneading, shaping, lifting and serving. He sits down at the long wooden bench by the window, where a sliver of sunlight cuts across the flour-dusted boards. For the first time since before dawn, he allows himself to rest. Midday is not a time of silence outside. The streets hum with life. Vendors in the square call out their wares, children chase one another past the bakery door, and the church bell tolls noon in slow, steady beats. Yet inside, the bakery is a sanctuary of stillness. The baker leans back, letting his body absorb the quiet, his breath easing into a slower rhythm. He takes his meal from a small basket tucked beneath the counter. It is simple: a wedge of cheese, a heel of yesterday's bread, and a cup of watered ale. Nothing grand, but after hours of work, it tastes rich. The bread, though not fresh, is still firm and filling. He chews slowly, savoring each bite, the texture coarse but familiar. For the baker, this is not just food, it is a reminder of the work of his own hands, the gift he offers daily to others, and, in moments like this, to himself. As he eats, the baker reflects on the morning. He remembers the laughter of the children, the gratitude in the traveller's eyes, the steady rhythm of neighbors who arrive day after day. Each loaf sold is more than sustenance. It is a connection, a bond woven into the fabric of town life. He does not dwell long on these thoughts, but they rest quietly in his heart, giving a sense of purpose to his weary bones. The warmth of the oven, though its fire has faded, still lingers in the bakery. The stone walls hold the heat, creating a cocoon of comfort against the cooler air outside. The baker stretches his legs, the weight of fatigue pulling at him. He knows there is more to be done. The tools must be cleaned, the boards swept, the dough prepared for tomorrow. But for now, he allows himself the rare gift of pause. He leans his elbows on the table and gazes out through the small window. Beyond it, the square is alive with color. Stalls draped with cloth, baskets piled high with produce, pots glinting in the sun. Farmers trade, housewives bargain, and apprentices carry loads for their masters. It is a tapestry of motion, and yet he feels no need to step into it. His place is here, where the day's work has already been poured out into loaves that now nourish the very people he watches. The baker's thoughts drift, as they often do during these midday rests. He remembers his apprenticeship years ago when he first learned the art of bread. How clumsy his hands were, how impatient his heart. His master would tell him that bread cannot be rushed, that it must be allowed to rise in its own time, to bake in its own rhythm. Back then, he struggled to understand. Now, with years behind him, he knows the wisdom of those words. The life of a baker is not about speed, but about patience, care, and trust in the slow miracles of fire and grain. He finishes his meal, wiping his hands on a cloth. The bakery is still quiet, but he knows it will not last. Children may return in the afternoon for crumbs or small rolls, and travelers might knock on the door in hopes of a leftover loaf. There are also preparations for tomorrow: flour to be measured, yeast to be tended, wood to be gathered for the oven. Rest is brief, but it is enough. The baker stands and stretches, his joints stiff but steady. He moves through the bakery, tidying the tools one by one. The kneading trough is scraped clean, the benches swept clean, the benches swept. Of flour, the peels set against the wall. Each action is unhurried, almost meditative, part of the rhythm of the day. When the chores are finished, he steps outside into the street. The sun is high, warming the stones beneath his feet. He breathes in deeply, filling his lungs with air not scented by bread, but by earth, wood smoke, and the faint sweetness of flowers from the market stalls. He exchanges nods with neighbors as they pass, small gestures of recognition that remind him he is part of this larger web of life. The afternoon stretches ahead, quieter than the morning, but still carrying its own tasks. Soon, he will begin preparations for the next day's loaves. But for this moment, brief and golden, he allows himself to stand in the sun, to rest his hands and mind, to savor the balance between work and stillness. Inside the bakery, the oven cools, the walls hold their warmth, and the faint smell of bread continues to drift into the street. Though the loaves are gone, their presence lingers, woven into the life of the town as surely as the baker himself. The quiet of midday fades as the sun tilts westward. The streets outside soften into a slower rhythm, but inside the bakery, the afternoon begins its own subtle symphony of work. The baker, refreshed from his short rest, steps back into the familiar warmth of his shop. Though the morning's rush is over, the next day's bread will not appear on its own. Preparation is the soul of his craft. He starts with the flour. Heavy sacks, brought in from nearby mills, sit stacked against the back wall. The baker unties one and plunges a scoop inside, the fine powder rising into the air like a pale mist. He measures carefully, pouring it into wooden bins, smoothing the surface with his hand. Each grain carries the promise of tomorrow's loaves, harvested from fields tended by neighbors, whose lives, like his, are bound to the land and the rhythm of seasons. Next comes the yeast. A small crock rests near the oven, holding the starter that has been tended and renewed day after day. It is alive, quietly bubbling, its faint tang a reminder of countless loaves that came before. The baker stirs it gently, then sets it aside to breathe. Tomorrow's bread will rise because of this humble, living companion. In its way, it is a silent partner in his work, as essential as his own hands. The baker prepares the kneading trough, sweeping it clean and sprinkling a little flour across its surface. He runs his hand over the smooth wood, worn by years of use, each groove and scratch a mark of labor and time. This trough is more than a tool. It is a vessel of memory, bearing the invisible weight of thousands of loaves that have passed through its embrace. As he works, the afternoon light slants through the bakery's small windows, painting golden stripes across the flour-dusted benches. The shadows lengthen, and dust motes drift lazily in the air, their slow dance reminding him of the passage of hours. He hums softly to himself, a simple tune, almost as old as the craft itself. Soon, the baker steps outside to gather wood for the oven. Though it will not be lit again until early dawn, the wood must be dry and ready. He stacks it carefully near the hearth, choosing each log with care. Oak burns hot and steady, but softer woods catch quickly. A balance of both is needed. As he works, the smell of wood mingles with the faint lingering aroma of bread, weaving together the two elements that define his life, fire and grain. Returning inside, he wipes his hands and begins preparing small bowls of ingredients for tomorrow. Salt, yeast, water, each measured with quiet precision. It is not yet time to mix the dough, but these small acts of readiness ensure that the morning will flow smoothly, no motion wasted. In the life of a baker, efficiency is not haste, but harmony, a rhythm learned through countless dawns and dusks. Occasionally, a passerby knocks at the door, asking if any bread remains. The baker offers what little is left, a broken loaf, a few rolls tucked into a basket. Sometimes he accepts coin, other times only thanks, for bread is not always about payment. It is about feeding, about sustaining, about giving warmth to those who seek it. These small exchanges bring life to the quiet afternoon, reminding him of his place in the community's heart. As the day deepens, the baker sweeps the floor. Flour dust, crumbs, and bits of stray dough are gathered and tossed aside. He scrubs the benches and tools, dipping cloths into cool water, the scent of damp wood filling the air. The sound of scraping, sweeping, and rinsing becomes a rhythm of its own, almost like a prayer, cleansing the space for tomorrow's labors. He pauses by the oven, now cold and quiet. Its great stone mouth yawns dark and empty, but he rests his hand on its side, feeling the faint warmth still trapped within. Tomorrow, the fire will roar again, and the bakery will fill with heat, noise, and life. For now, the oven sleeps just as he will later. Before the day ends, he sets aside a few loaves for his own household and for those in need. He tucks them into cloth, their crusts still fragrant, though they were baked hours ago. To give bread freely is as much a part of his work as selling it. Generosity is woven into his craft, as surely as flour into dough. The last task of the afternoon is simple but symbolic. The baker sharpens his knife, running it along a stone until the edge gleams. It is used for scoring the loaves, for giving them their distinctive marks, the cuts that let them expand in the oven. Each loaf bears its own signature, a small artistry that tells of care, not just necessity. He places the knife down carefully, ready for another dawn. The afternoon quiet deepens, and the baker steps outside once more. The sun sinks lower, bathing the town in warm amber light. Market stalls are being packed away, voices softening as neighbors return to their homes. The baker breathes deeply, filling his deeply. Lungs with the cooling air, grateful for another day nearly done. Inside the bakery, everything is ready for tomorrow. The flour waits, the yeast stirs softly, the wood rests stacked by the hearth. All is prepared. The day's labor, though demanding, feels complete, balanced by the calm of this final ritual of readiness. The baker closes the shutters, the last rays of light slipping away. Evening will come soon, and with it rest. But for now, he stands in the quiet bakery, his heart at ease, knowing that his craft, humble, patient, steady, will begin anew with the next rising sun. As the sun dips lower and shadows stretch across the cobbled streets, the bakery, though tidied and mostly prepared for the next morning, stirs to life once more. Evening brings its own visitors, not in the great rush of dawn, but in gentle trickles, like ripples spreading across calm water. These customers come not for the bulk of daily sustenance, but for the small remaining loaves, the simple rolls, or a crust saved aside for supper. The baker, though weary from the long day, welcomes them with quiet patience. The wooden door creaks open, and the first figure steps inside, a mother with 2 children tugging at her skirts. Their eyes glance toward the shelves, mostly empty now, save for a few loaves and small bundles wrapped in cloth. The baker smiles, offering what remains. The mother counts her coins carefully, but he notices her pause, her hesitation. Without a word, he adds an extra roll into the basket. The children's faces brighten, their gratitude filling the quiet space more than words could. Next comes an older man, his back bent with years of labor. He leans on a sturdy cane as he steps into the warm scented air. He does not ask for much, only a heel of bread, enough to accompany a bowl of broth at home. The baker cuts him a piece, wrapping it in cloth, pressing it gently into his weathered hands. The exchange is simple, yet profound. In giving, the baker strengthens the invisible threads of community, threads as strong as rope, woven through kindness and care. As the evening deepens, neighbors arrive one by one. A blacksmith stops by, soot still smudging his arms, trading stories of sparks and iron for a loaf to share with his family. A young shepherd, returning from the fields, offers a wedge of cheese in place of coin, a barter as old as the land itself. The baker accepts gladly, placing the cheese beside his own meal. Both men nodding in quiet agreement, the bakery becomes, for a short time, a gathering place. The day's toils are set aside at the threshold, and conversation flows as easily as the scent of flower still lingering in the air. People share news of the town, whispers of harvest, or laughter over small mishaps. The crackle of voices blends with the soft scrape of benches, the shuffle of feet, the creak of the door swinging open and shut. It is not the bustling market, nor the loud tavern, but something gentler, a space where bread and warmth create fellowship. Children are often the liveliest visitors. Their small hands reach eagerly for crusts, their chatter filling corners of the shop with energy. The baker sometimes sets aside tiny rolls just for them, shaping them smaller, almost playful, so that they feel like treasures made especially for young fingers. In their joy, he finds a reflection of his own love for the craft. Simple, honest, nourishing. As the last light of day fades outside, the baker lights a small lantern. Its warm glow spills across the counters, casting long shadows across the empty shelves. The loaves are nearly gone now, only crumbs and scattered flour left where abundance once stood, but the baker does not see emptiness. To him, it is a mark of fulfillment, proof that the bread he shaped, kneaded, and baked has found its way into homes, bellies, and hearts. Sometimes, strangers pass through the town and find their way to his door. A traveler with a dusty cloak may enter, seeking only a crust to carry for the road. The baker never turns them away. The baker never turns them away. Bread, after all, is the traveler's companion, simple, sustaining, and forgiving of long journeys. These rare visitors bring with them stories of distant places, and for a moment, the little bakery becomes a doorway to the wider world. The baker notices the rhythm of evening customers is slower, unhurried. Unlike the morning rush, with its clamor of urgency, the evening is marked by pauses, conversations, and small acts of sharing. He savors these moments. They remind him that bread is not only the work of hands and ovens, but of hearts and people. Each loaf carries not just grain and fire, but fellowship. As the last few customers depart, the baker leans against the counter, lantern glowing beside him. The air is quieter now, save for the faint rustle of night beginning outside. Crickets chirp, footsteps fade along the cobbles, and a cool breeze slips through the open door. He feels the weight of the day settle upon his shoulders, but it is not heavy. It is the gentle weight of purpose fulfilled. Before closing, he takes a final basket filled with small scraps and broken pieces and carries it out into the street. A group of children playing nearby pause as he calls to them softly. They run over, eyes wide, laughter bubbling as he shares what remains. Their hands are quick to accept the gifts, and their thanks, though simple, warm him deeply. Back inside, he closes the shutters and dims the lantern. The bakery grows still, the hearth cold, the benches cleared, yet the memory of evening customers lingers, their voices, their gratitude, their presence. For the baker, this quiet ritual is as important as kneading or baking. It ties the bread not only to the oven, but to the people it feeds. And so, as night settles fully upon the town, the baker rests. Tomorrow will bring another dawn, another fire, another rush. But tonight, he carries with him the gentle glow of the evening, the faces of neighbors, the joy of children, the dignity of labor, and the peace of knowing that, in his own small way, he has nourished more than bodies. He has nourished community. The day has been long, and the baker now turns to the final act of his routine, closing the bakery. The evening customers have gone, the laughter of children fades into the quiet of the street, and the small shop is once again still. The lantern's glow flickers against the wooden walls, soft and golden, a kind companion in this final stretch of labor. He begins with the shelves. Though nearly bare, crumbs cling to the wood, reminders of the morning's abundance. With slow, steady strokes of a cloth, he wipes them clean, the faint sound of brushing filling the silence. He lifts the baskets, inspecting them for splinters or loose reeds, and sets them aside. They will rest tonight as he does, ready to hold tomorrow's bread. The counters, dusted with flour and speckled with dough, bear the marks of the day's toil. The baker scrapes them gently, his hands sure and practiced. Each scrape is a small act of closure, a way to honor the work done and prepare for the work to come. He does not rush. This is not a task to finish quickly, but a ritual of respect for his craft. The oven, once roaring with fire, now sits cool and silent. Its bricks hold only the faintest warmth, a memory of the flames that danced within it. The baker kneels, sweeping out ashes, their faint grey plumes rising and settling once more. Though humble, this task carries weight. For the hearth is the heart of the bakery, and caring for it is like tending to a trusted friend. With the practical tasks done, he turns to the tools of his trade. Wooden paddles, the handles worn smooth by years of use, are leaned carefully against the wall. Clay bowls are stacked neatly, their rims cleaned of flour. Knives and spoons, polished and set in their places, glimmer faintly in the lantern light. To the baker, these are not mere objects, but extensions of his own hands. Keeping them in order is as natural as breathing. From the storeroom, he brings out sacks of flour, placing them within reach for the early hours of tomorrow. He checks the salt and the small jar of yeast, nodding quietly at their sufficiency. Every measure, every placement, carries intention. To leave the bakery in readiness is not simply preparation for tomorrow, but a promise to himself that the rhythm of work will continue, steady as the seasons. Occasionally, his thoughts drift as he works. He remembers the faces of those who came earlier, the mother with her children, the blacksmith with his stories, the shepherd with his cheese. Each memory is a thread woven into the tapestry of the day. The bread he baked has already left the shop, but in his mind, the bakery is still full of voices, laughter, and the gentle hum of life. As the shutters are drawn closed, the room darkens, leaving only the lantern's circle of light. Outside, the town has grown quiet. The marketplace is empty, the sounds of trade replaced by the whisper of night. A distant bell tolls the hour, steady and solemn, reminding him that the world beyond his bakery moves on even as he pauses. Before he extinguishes the light, the baker takes a moment to stand still in the center of his shop. He breathes in the faint scent of bread that lingers in the air, warm, yeasty, comforting. This scent is the echo of the day's labor, the invisible gift left behind after the loaves have been sold. It is, in its way, a reminder that though the bread is gone, the essence of the craft remains. At the small wooden table near the wall, he sets out his simple supper, a piece of cheese from the shepherd, a crust saved from the morning's batch, and a cup of ale. He eats slowly, savoring each bite. There is no rush now, no clamor at the door, no demands of the oven, only stillness, only the quiet satisfaction of a day completed. Sometimes a passerby will see the faint glow of his lantern and tap gently at the door, asking for a crust. The baker always obliges. Bread, after all, is never truly denied to the hungry. But tonight, the street is empty. Only the stars keep him company, scattered bright across the dark sky, their light drifting faintly through the shutters. When the meal is finished, he tidies the table, rinses his cup, and sets it neatly aside. The lantern is lowered, the flame pinched between careful fingers. Darkness settles quickly, wrapping the bakery in its embrace. The world grows hushed, save for the creak of beams and the sigh of the cooling earth. The baker moves to the narrow stairs leading to his small loft above the shop. Each step is measured, the wood groaning softly beneath his weight. He does not glance back, for he knows the bakery is ready, clean, prepared, and at rest. Tomorrow, before dawn, it will awaken again with fire and flour, but tonight it sleeps as he must. He lies on his straw-filled mattress, pulling a simple blanket over his weary frame. Through a small window, the moonlight spills across the floor, silver and calm. His eyes grow heavy, but his heart is steady. He has lived another day of purpose, of labor, that nourishes not only bodies, but lives. In the quiet, before sleep fully takes him, he whispers a prayer of thanks for bread, for fire, for community. And with that, the baker drifts into rest, the hum of the town fading into dreams. The bakery below lies silent, but tomorrow, with the first spark of dawn, it will stir once more. The bakery rests in silence now, yet above the quiet shop, the baker lies awake for a time, his thoughts drifting like the embers that once glowed in the oven. Though his body is tired, his mind lingers on the day just past, savoring its moments as though they were another kind of bread, warm and nourishing to the spirit. He recalls the first light of dawn, when the hearth was kindled and the promise of the day began. The memory of those early hours returns with vivid clarity, the crackle of firewood, the hush of still streets, the simple joy of working with his hands as the rest of the town still slept. To him, those hours felt like a gift, a chance to greet the day in peace, to create before the world stirred. As his thoughts wander, he smiles faintly at the faces he served, the children laughing as they clutched warm loaves, the blacksmith with flour dust on his beard as he told another of his endless tales, the shepherd leaving behind cheese in trade for bread. The baker knows that his loaves travel farther than he does. They sit at tables in cottages and taverns, passed hand to hand, broken into pieces to be shared. Each crust carries with it a little piece of his labor, his care, his quiet devotion. There is comfort in that thought. Though his life is modest, the reach of his work extends wide, threading unseen into the fabric of the town. He does not need recognition, for he knows the truth. Every life depends upon bread, and he has done his part in sustaining it. In that way, his work holds dignity, and he finds peace in its simplicity. The baker also reflects on the balance of toil and reward. His hands are rough, his back often sore, yet these are marks of a life lived with purpose. He does not envy the noblemen or merchants with their silks and coins. His wealth lies elsewhere, in the smell of bread rising in the oven, in the laughter of children at his counter, in the steady rhythm of days that give structure to his life. As the night deepens, the baker thinks of his father, who taught him the craft years ago. He can still hear his father's voice guiding his younger hands, teaching him to knead, to judge the weight of flour, to listen for the oven's hum. That wisdom is now second nature, flowing through every motion of his day. And one day, perhaps it will be passed again to a son, an apprentice, or another willing soul who wishes to learn the art of bread. For now, though, the baker rests in the knowledge that he is part of a chain. The loaves he bakes are not simply for today. They are part of an unbroken tradition stretching back centuries, as old as the first hearths, as enduring as the human need for food and fellowship. To bake bread is to be part of something larger than oneself, and he takes quiet pride in that. A cool breeze drifts through the small window of his loft, carrying with it the scent of night, damp earth, faint wood smoke, the distant sweetness of hay. He listens to the sounds of the town settling, a cart rattling faintly on the cobblestones, a dog barking once and then falling silent, the soft rustle of leaves. Soon, even these sounds will fade, and the world will sink into its deepest quiet. Before sleep takes him, the baker whispers a prayer. It is not elaborate, not full of grand words, but simple and heartfelt. Thanks for the day just lived. Thanks for the strength in his hands. Thanks for the community that gathers daily at his door. Thanks for the fire, the flour, the water, the salt, the simple miracles that together form bread. His heart feels lighter with the prayer spoken, his breathing slows, and at last his eyes close. The lantern has long been extinguished, the shop below is dark, and the oven is silent. All is as it should be. The night wraps around him like a blanket, carrying him gently toward rest. His dreams are filled not with grand visions, but with familiar comforts, loaves golden and warm, the chatter of voices at his counter, the glow of fire in the hearth. These are the images that shape his life, as steady as the rising sun. And so the baker sleeps, his day complete. The bakery, too, sleeps with him. Shelves bare, counters clean, tools at rest. But within its walls lies the heartbeat of another day waiting to begin. For when dawn returns and the first spark of fire is lit, the rhythm will continue. The cycle of work, of service, of quiet fulfillment will go on, as it always has. The story of the medieval baker is not one of grandeur, but of constancy. In every loaf, there is care. In every day, there is purpose. And in every night, there is rest, carrying him forward into tomorrow.